Hey everyone, welcome back to the Immutable Word. We are jumping back into the second part of the Effective Christian Manager, where Robin and I were talking about the tools of good management in general, whether if you're in the workplace, in a professional environment, or if you're working in a ministry, or both. And there are even elements that you can apply some of these principles in your personal life as well. So we talk about these principles that are ultimately drawn from the Word of God, of course, and we see some of those parallels as we begin to dig into them. So if you haven't listened to the first part, it would make a lot more sense if you listen to part one, where we do a bit of an intro into what we're talking about. We're also doing a bit of a book review of the the Effective Manager, is the name of the book, and we use that as a guide as we talk through it. And then we also talk about how we apply those same rules and tips and tools in our professional workplace, as well as ministry and even personal life. So hopefully this is something that's helpful to you and perhaps resonates well with whatever it is you're doing, because you don't have to be a manager per se, but you can take a lot of those principles and apply them in your work or in your ministry. So without further ado, let's get right back into it, and hope you enjoy. Thanks. The next big thing here is equally important, is communicate about performance. And what I mean with this is that you need to provide regular, clear, and actionable feedback. And this is both positive and constructive. And this is key, because this is going to help your directs to improve. If they don't know what to improve, they're never going to grow. It's our responsibility. If you're a manager, it's your responsibility to provide feedback to reinforce good behavior and be able to correct behavior in a way that's constructive.
Yeah, bad behavior.
Bad behavior.
So would you say that the first step, getting to know your people, actually aids and benefits giving them feedback about performance?
If you have their respect and you have influence in the right way over them, they're going to be more receptive to feedback.
Right.
Once you've built that bridge, they're not going to get defensive about it.
That's
like,
right.
Okay, they're actually good. In most cases, they're going to be very appreciative of it, because they're going to understand that because you care, okay, this is key. It's because you care, you're giving them this feedback. It's just like your kids. Why do you correct them? Is because you don't care?
Right.
Well, you care. You want them to grow. You
don't want them to continue down a path that's either self-destructive or destructive to the project or destructive to the team.
That's it. That's exactly it. So it's absolutely key to communicate the performance, so that way they know that they're growing.
So when we say communicate their performance, can you give an example of what that might sound like?
Yeah, and there's even a formula for that as well, because how do I provide good feedback? How do you provide effective feedback? And
there's a podcast for that.
And there is a podcast for that. It's also in this book. But there's a great model that I use, and it's related to this. So when I told you earlier, it's like I adapt some of these things to my own methods, but it's using them as a foundation. There's something called SBI.
Right.
That's called situation behavior.
That's one another Russian intelligence
impact.
group.
It's also another Russian intelligence group. I'm sure. But no, it's an abbreviation or an acronym for S is for situation, B is for behavior, and I is for impact. So it's a great way of being able to tactfully provide feedback to people, maybe in a constructive way. Maybe there's there's a behavior in a situation that they've been involved in. Maybe they were in a meeting, and the way their tone came off maybe perceived them to be aggressive, right? And they're not aware of that. So that's the situation. They're in a board meeting.
So would you say it's a good way to avoid sounding like you're personally offended about their behavior?
That and being ambiguous. That's such a problem. It's like, hey, you know what? You're just really rude.
So what would you say? So what would you say?
How do you respond to that?
So what would you say when you're citing the situation and the behavior? What is the most important aspect of that? Like when you're telling them about a situation, the behavior, what is the most important thing that a manager should focus on or a leader should focus on when they're providing this feedback?
Well, it's obviously citing the specific behavior, but also citing the impact to the business as a result of that behavior.
Would you say that observable behavior is more important than what you assume they're feeling?
That's right.
Okay, so the thing that you said about observable, actionable behavior, I think it's important that we only give them feedback on what we saw, what we heard, what we experienced visibly, because I cannot assume, I can't, like if a guy gets mad, let's just say he's slamming the door at work. I can't go, man, hey, why do you hate your job so much?
That's exactly it. That could be even more harmful, is that you're ambiguous and you're it's almost like you're attacking their character.
Well, you're assuming.
And you're also assuming.
And you're making a hasty generalization,
right?
Because you don't have all the information.
This, unfortunately, is a very common occurrence because people don't know how to actually address it in the right way. I've had people jump to conclusions in personal situations, complaining about directs, like, well, this person just hates talking to people.
Yeah.
And I always ask them, I ask probing questions like, can you give me any specific examples, behaviors of where this happens? Like, well, I don't really have any, but I was like, okay, well, when you do, let me know, and I'll address it.
And I'm going to be honest with you, this really helped me because I'm an introvert, and it's hard for me to, I guess, approach somebody about corrective behavior. Like I need them to correct a behavior because you feel like you're overstepping your boundaries.
It's not organic.
So this citing the behavior, the external, outward, visible behavior is so effective. I had a guy that was very sensitive. If you try to give him any kind of feedback, he'd start yelling at you type of thing, right? So I had to be very careful about how I approached him. And what I would do is say, hey, the other day when we were in the meeting, you raised your voice, several times. And not only that, when one of your teammates would start to talk, you would over talk them. You would get louder. You would interrupt them.
Yeah.
I said, so you gave everybody the impression. Notice I didn't say everybody hates you. Or why are you so disrespectful? Why do you dislike your teammate so much? I didn't say any of that. I just said, look, this is what we saw. This is what we heard. This is what we experienced. And here's the impression or the impact. That's where the impact goes. What you're showing people is that you're disrespecting their time and their voice and their contribution by behaving that way, outwardly visible. For whatever reason, I don't know what your motive is. All I'm saying is by behaving that way, the impact is the team doesn't trust you. The team isn't going to be likely to listen to your input. Your input won't be considered valuable to them. You're showing the team disrespect because you're cutting them off. You're not allowing them to contribute to the team discussion, whatever the case is. That's the impact. Then what's the last thing they always say when you provide the SBI? Then what would you follow it up with?
What can you do going forward to ask for that commitment?
That's accountability.
That's right.
Right.
And so they'll commit. It's like, okay, yes, I'll fix it. I'll do this differently. And so there's actually 4 parts to this. You first ask for feedback. Can I give you some feedback?
Right.
And so you allow them to
So are you
like
saying unsolicited advice is still unsolicited? Is that what you're saying?
Glad you got that out of it. Yes. So, but when you ask for feedback, it's like you're giving them control.
Right.
It's like most of the time it's like, yeah, sure. And if they say no, it's going to bother them enough where they're going to circle back
That's
later.
right.
It's like, hey, what were you going to tell me?
And this is part of the hard conversation because, again, the whole root of this is speaking to them about performance. All you're trying to do is you're not trying to be their counselor. You're not trying to be, a psychologist. You're just trying to correct performance. You're just trying to address a performance issue.
Yeah, and the thing about having these hard conversations, it doesn't need to be this, all right, we got to sit down for an hour, we have to talk about it. You can give effective feedback, constructive feedback in 30 seconds.
Right.
It's like, hey Susie, do you have a second? Do you mind if I give you some feedback? She's like, oh, yeah, sure. It's like, hey, when you did X, okay, that's when you're stating the behavior. This is the impact. It might have been perceived as such, and this might impact the timeline. The
situation provides context.
Right.
The behavior demonstrates what you observed, And the impact is how it negatively impacted performance, whether it's the team performance or the individual's performance.
Or some kind of impact to our projects. Like, hey, what can you do going forward
Right.
to ensure that this doesn't happen again?
But it's beautiful how that stuff ties into the two critical outcomes, right? Which is achieving results, retaining people.
Right.
Retaining people. One of the things I wanted to tie in real quick, though, is the biblical principles that are tied to this. So Ephesians 4:15, the Bible talks about speaking the truth in love, right? We're not talking about an emotional love. We're talking about love as a responsibility, as an obligation. That, hey, I want to respect this person that I'm working with. I don't disrespect them because of some cultural difference, religious or political difference. It doesn't matter. All that's irrelevant. What I want to do is I want to speak the truth because the truth is objective, right? The truth is not emotional, but I need to speak about the facts, and I need to do it in a way that I am showing respect for who they are as a person, right? Not only that, the Bible talks about in Romans 14:12, it says, so then every one of us shall give account of himself. So guess what's important? When you're speaking about performance and giving them feedback, you're just trying to drive personal accountability. It's not your responsibility as a manager to do their job. It's their job. And all you're doing is reiterating, hey, your particular behavior, this certain situation is now impacting the team. It's impacting the team culture. It's impacting the team projects. So, and again, you have this accountability. So when you say, what can you do to correct that? You're driving personal accountability. That's biblical. That's Romans chapter 14, verses 12, right? So the Bible talks about wise counsel and correction that, you need to be able to give. The Bible talks about a wise man will learn and will increase in learning. And again, he that answereth the matter before he heareth it. So the idea is, look, listen to what drove that person, whatever those personal motivations are, whatever that personal situation is. I don't know. Now, if you're going to tell me that, like, hey, I'm having trouble at home, I'm having problems in my marriage, hey, my air conditioner broke down and it's like 90 degrees inside our house and I haven't been able to get to sleep. That's great. Now I understand what's producing the bad behavior, right? I didn't know that. I'm not going to assume that, but I'm going to let that person tell me. So, it's going to be important. So that whole communicate about performance, that is a biblical principle. That, what Jesus Christ did, I thought was interesting in John chapter 21, when after he rose from the dead, remember he's talking to Peter and he asks him 3 times, hey, Peter, do you love me? And he goes, Lord, I love you. He goes, okay, well then feed my sheep. He goes, Peter, do you love me? He goes, oh, Lord, I love you. And he said it 3 times, right? And what did he say? He goes, feed my sheep. And when thou art converted, strengthen the brethren. And I thought that was interesting because that's exactly what Jesus Christ is doing, is communicating about performance. He's saying, hey, Peter, your responsibility is you're going to be in a role of leadership. You're going to be one of the fundamental foundations of the church. I'm not talking about in the Roman Catholic sense, by the way, but I'm just saying that he's one of the leaders of the church. He wrote scripture. There was apostolic authority given to him. So guess what's critical? When you're converted, when you learn how to lead, I want you to strengthen the brethren. That's performance. He's communicating about that. And, like he tells, like whenever he converts a sinner, Jesus Christ, he goes, go out and sin no more. When he heals them, forgives them, he's always communicating about performance. Paul says the same thing. He goes, distribute to those that are willing, him that stole no more, let him, give to him that needeth, right? And so forth and so on. Paul constantly talked about performance, performance, performance. So a good manager, a good leader communicates performance. Number 1, he gets to know his people. Number 2, he communicates about performance. Anything else about performance that you want to mention before we go to the third thing?
No. I think that was covered pretty thoroughly, and I've got tons of examples around this. I mean, we've been doing this for a while.
I think we can take each one of these critical behaviors and build on them an entire episode.
We can.
So let's just, just to sake of time, what's the third thing? So we got get to know your people, communicate about performance. What's the third thing that's a critical behavior?
So now that you've built the bridge and have been communicating, you're building the trust, you have influence, and you're developing them, you're growing them with positive and constructive feedback. Now you can ask for more. this is getting them ready for the next stage. Are you grooming them to be a leader themselves or to develop further?
So the third thing is ask for more. So asking for more.
You're asking for more growth. This is what you call stretch
Stretching them,
goals.
yeah.
Yeah. So you might have
So
stretch goals.
you're not going to let them just be comfortable being stagnant.
I tell my people this all the time. It's like, once you feel comfortable, you need to get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Don't get comfortable. You have to continually stretch yourself.
Right.
You have to be continually uncomfortable.
Because at the end of the day, anybody listening knows how you grow is you step outside of your comfort zone. That's
Every
how you
time.
grow. I mean, when I became a manager of people, I was extremely uncomfortable. I was introverted. I didn't know how to, I didn't know how to challenge bad behavior. I didn't know how to deal with conflict effectively. I didn't know any of that stuff. But the more that I started dealing with it, I started learning these specific behaviors, concepts, these processes, and putting them into practice, the better I became at it. So you can't grow without being uncomfortable.
Repetition. So when you become a manager, you start applying these skills, and it's like with anything. If you're a musician, you practice, right?
Right.
You practice, and you just continually get better. And
how do you get better at speaking publicly? By
speaking publicly.
That's right.
You're gonna,
no matter how uncomfortable
it's going to be terrible at first, and it's going to be tough. And I'm an introvert too. None of this stuff comes naturally to me. I was not.
I thought you were born a
with it.
leader.
Yeah, thanks. But I had to practice. Like, it might sound silly, but I used to record myself and practice all the time because I had to do presentations. I had to stand up in front of people, and believe me, that is not something I desired to do, but because it's an expectation of my role in my job, you know what? I'm just going to do the very best I can. The only way to do it is to practice.
That's right.
Make yourself uncomfortable. I mean, you preach in front of 200 or 300 people. I know it's not comfortable for you to do that, but you do it and you practice, and the more you do it, the better you become at communicating.
Well, and of course, I've spent years on a street corner preaching.
There you go.
And that's the hardest.
Public speaking right
that's
there.
Probably the hardest group to preach to in the world is people that hate your message, right?
Yeah.
So, it's interesting just from the biblical passage. I know we kind of, there's a lot of things we can deep dive into this.
What we need to do is we probably need to circle back and maybe cover these 4 points and maybe a little bit more detail and break them down because there's just so much we can expand on. But yeah,
but this part about asking for more, for example, that's what the Lord Jesus Christ did. I mean, he says, "Hey, if you want to serve me, you got to take up your cross and follow me." He says, "If he that wants to live has to lay down his life." He talks about things that are challenges. Even Paul said the care of the churches and all the things that he experienced. And, he says the more that I love, the less that I'm loved. He goes on and on. There's challenges and roles in ministry and leadership. And I know that even as a believer, you want the only way that you're going to get people to go out there in the world and face a world that hates their Lord and their Savior is they're going to have to push themselves. They're going to have to stretch themselves. They're going to have to reach people that maybe they never reached before. They're going to have to contend with false doctrine. They're going to have to defend the faith. And this is where I see a major problem sometimes with ministry leaders is they don't stretch the people under them. If let's just say you're a teen leader, you do a teen ministry at church on Sunday, and you have people you're trying to groom and train them, but you never let them present material to the class. You never let them put together their own Bible studies. And here's the thing about ask for more. And you and I both know this, and this is where the coaching piece comes in. What does a good manager typically coach? Like if you ask somebody to do a job, what are you looking for?
Their gaps.
The failures, the parts where they're struggling the most. That's where you focus. And listen, if you don't ask them to do more, you'll never be able to identify those gaps. Let's just say somebody at work doesn't know anything about spreadsheets. And I say, hey, I want you to start creating a spreadsheet tracker for an executive summary report every Friday. I don't know anything about spreadsheets. Okay, start learning. let's look at the resources that are available. I mean, honestly, right? I mean, that's what you do. You say you need to start picking up the here's
Start
resources.
using them VLOOKUPs.
Exactly. Yeah. But you know the thing is, it's like I got a guy that he dabbled in spreadsheets a little bit. Now this guy is making beautiful pivot tables and charts that even our regional and national teams are
that's
like,
what I'm talking about.
how
The charts.
Yeah, exactly.
So we do for fun on Friday nights.
Exactly. Yeah, love that stuff. But it's like, but honestly, he didn't know anything about that until I started stretching him. Hey, I want you to do this. And I would work with him. I said, hey, why don't you do this with the pivot? Hey, why don't you format it this way? Why don't you change this? It doesn't, your borders look
What are you
wrong.
doing? You're investing in this
That's
person.
right. You're coaching the gaps. You could do this in the ministry. You get somebody, you want them to do I want you to bring a lesson this Sunday. And this person is just all over themselves. They have no idea. They don't know how to put an outline together. Their message is confusing. Then what you do is say, hey, can I give you some feedback? Do you mind if I give you some feedback on the sermon this morning? There wasn't a consistency from start to finish. Your points weren't really clear. What do you think you can do to kind of make the message a little bit more, maybe more concise and summarized? You were missing some good relevant cross references. What do you think you can do next time? And give them that opportunity, but give them that feedback. And so that you're asking for more, but you're challenging them and stretching them.
And when you don't do that, you stunt their growth.
That's right.
And they become complacent, and then they become unhappy. That's usually the typical order.
Yep.
When you don't grow your people in the right way.
So get to know your people, communicate about performance, ask for more. What's the fourth critical behavior?
I like this one. This is when you're really starting to grow them further, and they're getting ready for that next step above, maybe a future leadership position. It's pushing work down. It's delegation. We've all heard delegation. I think people misunderstand delegation as, you're just shifting work to somebody else and they're just going to do it and you're just not going to do anything.
Right.
It's not that at all. This empowers this person to take on something bigger, a project, something that a leader would typically
and this is
run.
And just to make the distinction between pushing work down and asking for more. Asking for more is in their current role, you're just stretching their skills.
You're coaching
and
their
behaviors.
gaps, right?
But in delegation, how is that different?
Delegation is something that I, as a manager, could be running and doing what I typically do. But when I find somebody that I'm mentoring to grow,
So let's just say your responsibility as a manager is to publish a TPS report every Friday.
Make sure we have the right cover letter and the TPS report.
Right. So what you're saying, delegation is that now they have to.
It's a managerial duty,
Right.
And so you're stretching them to that 50%. Remember, we were talking about that earlier. Maybe we coach the gaps and they're operating at 100% now because they can do the spreadsheets and they know how to do VLOOKUPs. You've coached those gaps. Now they're operating at that 25% in the next level or 50% in my level.
Yep.
And now okay, now let's give you some of those responsibilities. So when that manager opportunity comes about, maybe they're going to be a leader. They're ready to step into the role.
I'll give you a perfect example. So let's just say that my individual that learns spreadsheets and they're putting these beautiful pivot type charts together, right? I'm using that chart in a weekly executive report to a director or senior managers. Okay, and I have to present that slide, and I'm walking through the numbers on that. But I'm going to go on PTO. I'm going to leave, I'm going to go vacation next Friday. I'm going to say, hey, Mike, I need you to step in and be my proxy, and I want you to present the slide to senior managers and directors.
And guess what? That gives that guy exposure.
That's right.
And that makes it easier to advocate for that person to move them into a higher position when it comes time to do that.
It's quantitative, exactly. And so that's what you do by delegation. Delegation is the power. It forces them to learn and to expand their role. Maybe he's an engineer number 7, level 7, but I need him to be a frontline manager at some point. So I'm going to start giving him frontline manager tasks and projects and things to work on. I'm going to delegate. Where I would normally do it, I want you to start doing it.
And this might sound strange. You're working yourself out of a job.
Yep.
You want to be able to get your team to a place where it'll function seamlessly even without you there. So if you decide to go on vacation, your team doesn't fall apart.
That's
things
right.
don't stop. That machine is well greased. It continues to work on its own because that's how you designed it to work. And that's exactly how you're supposed to build a team. If you're a micromanager, well, guess what? When you leave, that team's going to fall
Right.
apart. They're not going to know what to do. And we could talk about
Yeah.
micromanaging and
Well,
what that means.
micromanaging is you doing the job that they should be doing.
And what are the repercussions of that? You don't have trust. They don't trust you. You don't have respect. You don't have. I mean, it's just a domino effect.
It's interesting. I didn't learn it necessarily from manager tools, but I learned it later on in my role at work, and it's called they called it situational leadership. And you had you had levels of delegation. For example, level 1 would be, hey, I'm going to walk you through this as much as possible. I'm going to help you come to, try to get you groomed to where you can kind of fit in this role. But ultimately, I'm going to make the final decision. Level 2 might be, hey, we're going to run through it. I'm going to give you a little bit of leeway. You come up with it. But I'm going to let you I'm going to give you 2 choices, and you're going to give me the best choice, and so forth. Eventually, you get to level 4, which is, I trust you implicitly. I don't need to guide you. I don't need to direct you. You can do it. So understanding those levels of delegation actually can help you grow somebody. I was interesting, from the biblical perspective, I thought it was interesting was where Moses, for example, he was judging all of Israel. And he comes to Jethro and his father-in-law, Jethro, and Jethro tells him, man, Moses, you're taking way too much on you. You need to divvy up the responsibility of judging to different groups of people. You need to have captains of hundreds and captains of tens and so forth. What's interesting, I think is interesting because I learned it in the business world, the most effective number of direct reports you can have is 10 people. 10 people is the maximum number before you start to become, percentage-wise, ineffective. And what's interesting is that's the delegation number that Jethro got all the way down to Moses. Says you need to have captains of hundreds, and then eventually tens, thousands, hundreds, and tens.
Isn't that fascinating?
It's fascinating.
Like the reporting structure that we see in the quote unquote secular world today. I mean, all this stuff
matches the Bible. It's
comes from the
derived.
Bible.
It's rooted in Scripture. But what he did is what Moses was judging. What he was having to make decisions over, he has now passed that on to other leaders who now they're going to experience the same growth and understanding that he had to.
And who did Moses mentor?
Joshua.
Yeah, yep. There you go.
Yep. So that's important, man. So basically, what the book, and this is all outlined in the book, secularly speaking, professionally, industry wise. So he said the 2 important, outcomes that a manager have is number 1, achieving results. That's the metrics. That's the quantification. Then how does he do that? Retain people. And then the 4 critical behaviors to support those 2 outcomes: get to know your people, build personal, intimate relationships with these people, get to know them, get them to trust you. And when you achieve that, when you're working towards that, now you can openly communicate about performance. You can give them good, effective, feedback, and give them, because you're just trying to direct the performance. You're trying to get them to behave in a certain way.
I ask you a leading question because you're asking me a bunch of leading questions. So on day 1 or the first week that you're a manager, are you going to provide constructive feedback
Absolutely
to your director?
not. What you're going to do is you're going to have one-on-ones.
You want to build the relationship first.
That's right. And you need to observe. I think any new manager needs to spend at least 6 months to a year in his role before he starts criticizing processes, behaviors, things like that. And again, the key about feedback is ask for it. Don't assume it. Don't jump right into it, and don't do the Oreo cookie, the sandwich in the middle. Tell them they're a great person. By the way, you stink at what your job is,
but keep up the great work.
But you're a great person. That's
the worst thing. That's very harmful.
Yeah. Observe. Make points. Ask for their ideas. Start understanding who they are as people. Get to understand their strengths, their weaknesses. Right.
Yeah.
And then of course, asking for more. This is where you coach the gaps. Like say you're a building facility.
That's what we call the gap theory.
Let's just say you're a building facility manager or a lead, and you're training a person that's coming up under you, and you're going to say, hey, what I want you to do is, like, let's just say they don't know anything about controls, HVAC controls, and they have to learn how to set the thermometers, the thermostats, to program them, to manage them, and stuff like that. And they've never done that before. And so you say, hey, I want you to go in and I want you to set up the thermostats on levels 3, 4, and 5 of this building, and I want you to maintain it, and I want you to pull those numbers on a weekly basis. That's going to be, hey, coach the gap. And of course, where they mess up, oh, I forgot to do this, or I didn't know the Johnson control one versus, this device, or whatever the case is. So you coach and train the gaps. You don't assume they're an idiot because they don't know how to do it. You train them. The only time I would say you discipline somebody is after you've done considerable amount of training and coaching. And what you have to determine is this person not doing it? And this is how I judge it. It's either a resource problem, it's either a competency problem, or it's a behavior problem. Resource means they don't have the right tools to do their job. Competency, they don't have the right training to do their job. And behavior is they don't have the right attitude to do the job. And you've got to determine, is this a systemic behavioral problem that I've got to fix? So you coach those gaps. That's all in that coaching piece of it. Then delegation. Let's just say you're the building engineer. Now you've got to give a report to the senior, regional director of facilities. And now instead of you doing it, you have the person you're training do it. Hey, I want you to present the executive report to this person. Or I want you to give, a highlight of all the problems and suggestions of what we need to address the facility. That's what you do. You use those 4 things to, number 1, achieve results, and number 2, retain good people.
Yeah, that's perfect. So remember those 2 things if you're in a leadership position, or you aspire to be in a leadership position.
Or you can get the book.
There's a term, though, for coaching, feedback, one-on-ones, and delegations called the management trinity.
Yep.
Yeah, which I think is appropriate. So always remember those 4 things as a manager. Those are going to be your most important tools to be.
So remember the 4 things, the 4 Trinity things?
Yeah, well, they call it the Trinity, but it's actually 4 things. Coaching, feedback, and one-on-one is the easiest thing to remember.
Right.
Then delegation.
Yep.
So once you get that down, everything else is just going to fall into place, and you're going to be a.
So what you're saying is it's better that you just be born a leader than be.
You didn't get anything we were talking about here. No.
But I would encourage our listeners, listen, if you're in a leadership role, or you aspire to be a leader, or one day you hope to be a manager, or you want to perform at a higher level so that your manager or leader recognizes that. And maybe it could earn you promotions. It can earn you a bigger title, opportunities. Get this book. Learn the principles that are highlighted in that book. And listen, you may have a manager that is terrible at these behaviors. So Alan, I'm going to ask you, let's just say that because you've read this book and you are now working for a horrible manager because you read what a good manager should be, and you work for a manager that doesn't exhibit any of those behaviors. How do you handle that as a direct report of theirs?
Yeah, there's a term called you can manage up. Obviously, you're not going to provide feedback to your manager unless it is solicited. And
wait a minute, are you saying unsolicited advice is unsolicited?
Yes, but I always, most of the time in a lot of my one-on-ones, if you hear that in the background, that's our studio dog. It's going to be our mascot, I think, Cosmo. We have a doggy door that comes into our fake
one day
studio.
we'll use his. He's got a very nice picture that will be a podcast album one day.
Yeah, maybe we'll start selling it as merch or something. What was I saying? Oh, so I was going to say in my one-on-ones with my people, I always make an effort to ask them. I was like, hey, what can I do better? Is there something that I should start doing, stop doing, keep doing? I love this start, stop, continue doing.
Yeah.
And I ask for feedback because as a manager, I want to make sure that I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Maybe there's something I'm missing that they see. My manager doesn't ask me for feedback. I'll just admit it. It just doesn't.
Right.
So I don't give it. But if he were, there are a couple things that, it's like, hey, there are a couple processes or are some things that can help with our team.
Could you use open-ended questions to kind of direct the conversation?
You can. And this is where probing questions can maybe open up the conversation. And I would say, hey, there's a challenge on this team as a result of X. Do you have any suggestions about how we might be able to fix this with the team? Maybe we need to have more general team meetings to make sure that our people are heard.
Or have less meetings.
Or less meetings. Everybody wants more meetings. As a manager, I have way too many.
Well, one thing I was going to say, and I do hate meetings. I always
except
say,
our one-on-ones.
Yeah, I always say, yeah, exactly. I always say, man, this should have been an email, not a meeting. But this is what I would say. Sometimes the feedback I can give to my manager is actually just citing examples of things I might have learned or implemented.
Yeah.
So my manager will say, hey, Robert, how's the team doing? And I'll say, you know what I noticed, Tom? I noticed that I needed to really focus on this. I needed to build a better relationship with these individuals or provide good constructive feedback by citing external behaviors. So that way he might pick up on, like, you know what, that's a good point. That's something we can.
As long as you make the effort to
Right.
provide feedback in a very tactful and creative way,
Right.
Be very wise about it, use discretion.
Yeah, he is not your direct report. He's your
Right.
manager.
So you have to be careful when you do that. But so just be, again, I think you put it perfectly. I've directed conversations that way, like, hey, we're coming across challenges with the team. This is what I would suggest. I'd be open to your thoughts. What would you recommend? That kind of thing.
Yep.
And that opens up the conversation and it fixes a lot of problems. I'm going to guarantee you're going to have a manager that's not going to have all these, their ducks in a row. They're going to execute perfectly as a manager.
I don't have all these things in a row. And there's times that I'm going to mess up.
And I don't either. I'm always, that's why I said, like, I'm always constantly growing. I'm
Right.
always learning something new. And I'm sure it's always going to be that way until, my career is over. And that's what's important. Don't ever get complacent. You're like a tree. You're going to grow until you die. And that's the way you should think about it.
Yep, absolutely. Well, cool. So we recommend Mark Horstman's book, Effective Manager. It's not just for being a manager at work. The principles that are outlined in this book, I think, would be a huge benefit for ministry leaders, for pastors, for missionaries.
Hands down.
Absolutely. I think these are universal, invariant, abstract laws of leadership that apply across the board.
Here's the thing, and I know we're like going along, so we'll wrap up here pretty soon. People think that there's a distinction between the secular world and what we do and the ministry. There isn't.
There isn't. Not according to the Bible.
Not according to the Bible. These are all what the secular world is using is derived. Right. The principles are derived from that book.
And I'm going to tell you something on just to kind of like cap that. I've done one-on-ones and had conversations with my direct reports where I've actually integrated the biblical concepts into leadership skills, time management, even financial management, because these are biblical universal values that are applicable. There is not I'm going to go to my secular job and stop being a Christian. That doesn't happen. You are a Christian. I am a Christian manager.
Dude, so that is the testimony. By doing these things, you're having a good testimony.
Right.
And
I'll tell you, this is how I've implemented it. Because I've had exceeding performance reviews for the last 16 years under my current manager. That means he has given me above and beyond performance reviews that have always resulted in good bonuses and pay raises and stuff like that. And he'll give me that feedback. He's told me several occasions, hey, Robert, you're one of the best managers I've ever had reporting to me in my entire career. So you know what that does? It opens up an opportunity. And I always tell him, I say, Tom, the reason why is because I am a Christian. The Bible says that I'm supposed to do things heartily as unto the Lord. I see my obligation as a manager, as a person in this career, my honesty, my integrity as a Christian is pivotal. I can't say that. Pivotal.
Enunciate.
Right. It's pivotal as my role as a manager, as a role as a employee of this company. I will never compromise my Christian ethics and principles and values for my paycheck. I think they're complementary. I think they go hand in hand. A good employee should be a good Christian, and a good Christian should be a good employee.
Being a good witness presents an opportunity,
right,
to share the gospel, because people are going to ask you, why do you have those convictions?
That's right.
Well, they're based off of...
And I actually have had that happen. I was having lunch with my boss, and he said, okay, Robert, tell me about this Jesus thing. And we sat there for an hour and a half, and I was able to go from Genesis to Revelation, and openly, we were at a restaurant, so we weren't stealing from our company time, and I wasn't violating, because he asked me directly, tell me about this Jesus thing. And I was able to preach to him for an hour and a half. And he still to this day has great respect for me. He didn't become a Christian or anything like that, but you can definitely tell that it's affected him. I've given him a put a stone in his shoe because of my behavior, because of my testimony, because of my value as an employee, that I integrate my Christian ethics with my work ethic. I think they're inseparable. They should be one and the same. So I would say anybody that professes to be a Christian, don't be lazy. Don't have bad character at work. Don't have a bad attitude. Your bad attitude at work is going to hinder and it's going to harm your Christian testimony if you ever have an opportunity to witness to somebody.
So if you complain about your boss behind his back, if you involve yourself with things that are hindering the progress or the outcome that you're supposed to achieve at work, well, guess what? You're undermining your Christian testimony. You shouldn't get involved in that. So no matter what.
There's plenty of guys I've had that wear Christian T-shirts at work, and they're cussing, they're telling lewd jokes, they're lazy, they're not completing tasks on time. And I've had to pull some of them aside and say, look, man, I know you're a professing Christian. I really wish you wouldn't wear that shirt and behave the way you do, because you're giving the Lord Jesus Christ a poor name, a bad name because of your behavior. You're the only Christ they'll ever see, some of these people. And I just tell them, I said, you're ruining and destroying, just like David did when he committed the sin with Bathsheba. Nathan, the prophet, told him, he says, you've given the enemies of Israel, the enemies of God, great occasion to blaspheme. So that's why you got to be careful about this stuff. That's why I say it's hand in hand. If you're a Christian, act like a Christian. I don't care if you're at church or you're at work. Should be the same exact principles, the same ethics, the same values.
Yep, agreed. Well, that's one book down. They actually wrote another book called The Effective Hiring Manager. Maybe we'll cover another episode on that. But it's also very good.
It's so much to cover, and I know this is a longer episode for some, and I don't know, maybe we could split it into two, but the point is, I think it's such a valuable thing because it merges the boundaries of our everyday life. Some of us, we work for a living. We pay our bills. We've got to do these things. And my contention and my argument is that your Christian life, your Christian testimony goes hand in hand with your work life and your work testimony.
That's right. What we're doing out there, you have the connecting tissues into the biblical principles.
Yeah.
That we're operating by. So,
amen.
Yeah, this is a great session. For those, thank you for bearing with us as we talked about this. Great book, obviously. If you like this, if you want us to do more of these, and cover more practical.
Exactly. It's a little departure from a lot of the religious topics and doctrines we've talked about, but to us, this is important. This is actually one of the driving, types of discussions that we've had that helped us decide to do a podcast, because this is what we know. Yeah. We're not missionaries, we're not full-time pastors, and we're not on staff, but what we are managers at work. And what we've done is we've learned that the principles of management and leadership
ties in with the book.
They're just as applicable. It doesn't matter if you're a pastor or not.
And it's fascinating. It really is. And of course, we can talk about it for another hour and a half, but we'll spare you. We won't. So we might have to split this into two episodes, which is fine. So, but we hope that folks have gotten something out of it and have gotten some help and maybe some inspiration and maybe pointed you to some good resources. And again, you don't have to be a manager. Just be a leader on your team. If you have a bad boss, if you have a bad leader, then you be a good leader.
Yeah, you be the example.
Yeah, you be the good leader on your team, and you be the good have a good testimony.
Man,
and
you're already
apply
making
these.
me think. I'm already thinking of like 10 passages that go with that.
Okay, we should wrap it up. We'll go ahead and wrap it up unless you have anything to add.
No, I would just encourage anybody, just get the book, get a copy of the book. It'll be a blessing to you. I don't care if you're a manager or you're a direct report, you would really get some benefit out of it.
If anybody has any questions or questions about being a witness in the workplace and doing it at the right times, again, we can certainly talk about those things.
Yeah.
But if you have any questions about anything else, let us know. Send us an email, drop us a line, go to our website, and
if you could please give us a review. If you're on Podbean, Spotify, any of your podcasting host sites, YouTube podcast, we would love for a thumbs up. We would love for a subscription or a subscribe. What that does is that drives the algorithms and it puts this type of content in more people's hands. And that's really the ultimate goal here, is we just want to try to get as much truth out to as many people as possible.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Robert, I think we'll close that one up there.
Cool.
I think this is a great topic, a great conversation. As you can tell, we love talking about this stuff. So I will leave it at that, and we hope to see everybody on our next episode. So thanks for joining us today.